I believe lately the Cca and Kz are on the rise because how they changed their usual tuning, their usual V-shaped tuning into a more balanced one, and apparently almost everybody liked that, including me. And hello and welcome to Aftersound Review, and this is my review for the Cca Ca16 Pro. It's quite difficult to pronounce, I say. First of all, thank you for kztws.com for providing me with this review unit. If you are interested to buy them yourself, you can try to see the link in the description below and also find the discount code also in the description. Okay, just like usual, I will review them based on the build, fit, frequency response, sound, and comparison. Build quality wise, they are not really special, they are all using plastic material, but here's the unique thing. I found that this vent hole, it's not a gimmick, it's real, it's there, and if you play music, you will hear some kind of sound leaking through it. And all housing is using plastic material, and the nozzle, it's kind of small in comparison, but it's using aluminum and feels quite sturdy. And they're using QDC type pin and with this kind of cable. Actually, this kind of cable has been used for the latest kind of IEMs such as the Cca NRA, and actually I like this better than the usual braided style like the usual Kz or Cca. Well, fit-wise, they have a little big body, but for me they are still okay in my small Asian ears. They are not as good as the Cca NRA, but I should say it doesn't have any sharp edges, so I could wear them just fine. But here's a little issue that I find. Some of my friends didn't really get a proper fit with this IEM thanks to its short nozzle compared to its body. You could see that it has a quite large body, especially around this part, and the nozzle itself, also the ear tips, is quite short, so some people don't really get that proper fit. They don't really get that isolation that will be needed to get that amount of the true bass of this IEM. The frequency response alone for this Cca16 Pro, I could say it's somehow W-shaped with big bass. You can see that the emphasis is mainly on the bass area around this part, and then mid-range around 2K, and after that there's a little bit bump on the 6K, but after that the 8K is only resonance peak. Okay, talking about the comparison, like the 1DD+, 1DD+ has leaner mid to treble area, but somehow more extended treble, and then it's also leaner in bass area. So it's overall flatter, you could say. And then compared to the Weezer HE01, the Weezer HE01 is more focused in only bass and also mid-range, and after that the treble is more rolled off. Well, for the sound for this Cca Ca16 Pro, I'm mainly using my IEMs, so this X160. But if you're using your phone only, I think that's also fun because they are not hard to drive. But here's the thing that I'd like you to know, that it has small nozzle. This nozzle is short, and compared to its quite big body, it definitely feels kind of short. And the ear tips is short. So just take a look at this. This is the one using the stock ear tips, and this is the one using Final Audio Type E ear tips. You could see that the difference is huge, and using the stock ear tips, and I mean all of its stock ear tips is short like this, accompanied with this quite thick body. A lot of my friends and me myself, when I tried them for the first time, I don't really get a proper isolation for them. So when I'm using them, after I use them like this, I need to push them a little bit again to get a proper fit. And that actually happens with my friends too. So some of them don't really get the proper isolation, so the bass might be not really big with that. So I'm recommending you to try another ear tips, or simply just shove it a little deeper into your ears. Therefore, you could get a proper fit. And if you have that proper fit, for me, I'm using this Final Audio Type E ear tips. It definitely helps a lot with the fit. The sound of this Cca Ca16 Pro could be categorized as somehow mild V-shaped-ish IEM, and it falls into category bass head because of how big and punchy the bass is. And no matter what kind of song I play through this 16 Pro, it always feels busy and heavy. Yes, that's what I always think, because how heavy the bass is and the overall sound signature is focused towards the bass, but the overall detail of this IEM is quite good, and you get all of that information from micro details and macro details, but you also get that heavy bass, so it feels kind of heavy for me sometimes. It feels quite busy for me sometimes to really enjoy the music, but nevertheless it is somehow a really good tuning for some people, I believe. Well, the bass is obviously still the star of the show, because using any kind of song, when I play through the 16 Pro, it always feels like the bass, it's a little bit detached, but it's like you have your own mini subwoofer in here. You will always feel that somehow in the overall song. The bass, yes, it's just a little bit detached, but the overall punch, depth and tightness, you will feel that very textured bass. Just like I said, it's like having a little subwoofer in its own in its body. So it is actually really good for EDM music and for some pop music. And for you, if you are a bass head, you gotta try this one, because the bass is monstrous and really good for a lot of tracks. You need to try them. But the mid-range, for me, I don't really like the mid-range. It feels like even though the frequency response has that 2 kHz upper mid-range peak, but I don't really get that. The vocal, it's nevertheless, it always feels a little bit step back compared to the bass. The bass is always in the front, and the vocal is a little bit step back. And the overall presentation of the vocal is strange. For me, it's an awkward position, because it's not really bright, it's not really thin sounding. It's actually a bit thick sounding, but not really smooth with that BA timbre. And if you have heard the Blonde Bill 03 or Tanjim Tanya, that's what I call a proper smooth vocal. You don't really get that here. The texture of the vocal is a little bit dry and not really coherent compared to that thick bass that you get from the dynamic driver. And then the treble also suffers from the same timbre. It's a little bit dry but not very smooth. And then you also get that 6K sparkle that can be somehow feels a little bit pushed. So if you hear some cymbals, it will be heard like it's a little bit pushed, but it don't really have a good extension. For example, if you play some classical music like La Campanella or La Primavera, it's mainly using violin. You don't really get that high treble extension that you might get from some IEMs like the Cca NRA, even have better treble extension. But this IEM, it's mainly only pushing around the 6K area. And then it's the vocal, the overall tonality for this IEM is quite heavy, like I said, because the bass is the main priority for the overall sound signature of this IEM. But here's the thing, the detail of this IEM, maybe it's because it's using a lot of balance armature and a lot of driver of all, I feel that the detail of this IEM is really decent for such a bass head IEM. And at this price point, if you are a bass head and you want a lot of details, I think this is for you. Because, like I said, it has big bass, but accompanied with really good detail for the mid-range and treble. You will hear, if you hear some busy soundtrack, busy orchestral music, like from Hans Zimmer or for some orchestral music, I feel that the detail is actually really decent, even though you get that really punchy bass. But the soundstage is not really three-dimensional. Just imagine like a medium-sized ball. I don't really get that proper instrument separation and imaging also, but the detail is just really good. So yeah, I definitely recommend this if you are a bass head and you like a lot of bass but you want detail at the same time. It's for me one of the best CCA product that I've ever tried. And compared with some other $60 IEM like the Tin T2 Plus, for me, even though this Tin T2 Plus doesn't have that really amazing sub-bass punch, but for me, this Tin T2 Plus, even though it sounds thinner, I believe, but the overall timbre and coherence is better at this Tin T2 Plus. Also, it has better imaging and soundstage, especially for orchestral music or live music. So, even though I believe that a lot of you bass set, maybe a lot of pop lover at this price point will choose this Cca Ca16 Pro because of that very satisfying bass, but personally for me, I like timbre, I like natural thing the most, so I actually like this Tin T2 Plus better. It just sounds more natural to me, and it has better imaging and extension for the treble. And compared them with this Wizard HE01, for me, this Wizard HE01 will not be my main recommendation if you like detail. But compared to this Cca Ca16 Pro, it's just really different world. When I hear Cca Ca16 Pro, I always feel that it's crowded, it's heavy. But using this Wizard HE01, I only feel that I get to focus on the vocal and the bass in a much relaxed matter. So yeah, when I hear acoustic music, when I hear some vocal music, I actually prefer the HE01 despite of its lack of detail, but the tonality is just really natural and the timbre is also good. So yeah, for me, even though personally I don't really like this Cca Ca16 Pro, but I really believe that a lot of you who like bass and detail at the same time, you will like this IEM. And speaking at that point alone, for me this is a really impressive IEM for the price point. Okay, let's talk about the pros first. Overall, like I said, that's a really plus point for a bass head IEM to be this detailed at this price point. But talking about the cons, oh man, that I don't know what are you thinking, CCA, you really need to change the ear tips, because not only me, but a lot of my friends tried them and say the same thing and feels the same thing. It needs longer stem for the ear tips, and then the overall coherency and timbre is not the best. But nevertheless, still, would I recommend this to you? Yes, it's a really special product for me. And if you have any other question, please write down in the comments below, and see you next time. Bye bye.